You know, I had put beatboxing on the back burner. I had put everything I was passionate about on the back burner. And I was going all in on this school thing. Through that whole process of the school system was just like not for me. It's October 4th, 2015. I was laying on the floor with my dog and I was just crying and praying, like, please, like, I need an answer or I'm out, kind of a thing. Got a call from my friend Sean to a late night McDonald's run. It was like literally midnight. Play around with this trick that I do where I beatbox with a McDonald's cup. It was just a loving environment. Everyone was encouraging and they wanted me to do that. And so I did it. I beatboxed. The whole restaurant went quiet. Everybody, it felt like, pulled out their phones. Next day, it was at like 56,000 views. And then by the end of that next day, it was over 1 million. By the end of that week, it was over 10 million. 2 years later, past 2017, it was over 1 billion streams.
All right, welcome back to the Rain Brings Growth podcast. I'm your host, Matt Sidwell. We're here with Parker Kane today. He's a motivational speaker, and I met him just recently and really enjoyed talking to him, so I can't wait for you guys to hear from him. How's it going, Parker?
I am doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I was excited to come see the studio.
Yeah, it's been a work in progress, but hey, it's worth it.
Yeah. Looks like a lot of work, actually.
Yeah.
So
what have you been up to lately, man?
Just working away, you know, and with I don't know exactly when this episode will be released, but when we're recording it is right at that new year, you know, turn of the point into 2025. So lots of just reevaluating and trying to figure out what I should do this year.
Yeah, that winter arc, right?
Right.
Yeah, I feel you there. You ever make vision boards or anything?
The very first one I'm making is this year, and it's not that this is sponsored or anything, but Notion. Have you ever heard of Notion? It's a program or software online for notes, calendars, organization. I found a cool template for making a vision board on that. So,
oh, that's sweet.
It attaches. You know, you see the pictures, but it also attaches to your goals and your schedules and your to-do lists. So easier to keep track of.
Yeah, it's crazy because I actually made my first one last year. And just being able to look back and see like some of the stuff I had checked off that I probably wouldn't have, but I kept looking at that board and it was just in my brain, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's important. I got to do one with my kids here soon. I even get my kids involved with it now. They think it's cool. We have to kind of rein them in a little bit on whatever, you know, a vision board is, because they're just like, go to Disneyland or we're already doing that. So I'm like, you have to keep aiming higher, you know? But
yeah,
cool.
It's weird to look at the life view, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to think that big even sometimes.
Right.
Like right now I'm in the process of like bare bones writing my book, but on a vision board, you have to put like be a best-selling author or something bigger that's not right now.
Yeah. I think setting those goals that seem like they're not attainable are the ones you got to go for, because at least you're aiming high. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I moved around a lot between Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Oregon. But I've been in Idaho since I was like 9 years old.
All right.
Mostly. So I've been in Idaho, Pocatello, Idaho Falls area until recently. So
what part of Colorado were you in?
I was born in Greeley, Colorado, just outside of Denver.
Oh, nice. And what brought you guys over to Idaho then?
Well, I guess family stuff. My parents got divorced, and during that divorce, my dad ended up moving to Utah, and my mom and my sister and I moved with my grandparents here in Idaho.
What part of Utah were you in?
He went to Salt Lake City area. So
okay.
And he was there all the way until recently too. Now he lives in this area.
Oh, nice. So when you went to Pocatello, how was that?
I loved it. I mean, there's a lot of people that have their opinions about Pocatello. I've heard it called the armpit of Idaho before, but I personally enjoyed it. That's where I went to middle school and high school and had, you know, more of the childhood or upbringing memories with good friends and stuff. So
yeah, I've only been there for work. They have the women's prison there.
Oh yeah. Well, and I don't know if he still works there, but I have a buddy that worked at that prison.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So how long did you live there for?
All the way up until I was 19. And then I went to Oregon for 2 years. I served a 2-year mission for my church. And then after that, college in Rexburg, Idaho.
Okay. When you were a kid, did you play in high school or any sports or anything like that?
Yeah. So one thing I really, really appreciated about my upbringing is my mom always encouraged us to try everything, and early on too. So by the time we got to high school, we knew exactly what we wanted to focus on. So I tried like every sport except baseball, I think. And then I tried band, choir, drama, musical, dance, tumbling, like all those things growing up. And then in high school, I was like, okay, I'm more football and band. So I did all of the different band. I ended up being way more music and band than I was football, but that was the sport I went with. So,
oh, nice. Yeah, man, that's cool. What'd you play in band?
a lot of things, but primarily alto saxophone and French horn.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you do any band or football or sports or anything?
When I was a kid, I played baseball and Little League football. I was in Utah too. That's what I was wondering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we played a lot of Little League baseball and then football. Moved up here into Idaho when I was right after 7th grade. Played one more year of both football and baseball. Then 9th grade didn't do anything. 10th grade didn't do anything. 11th grade didn't do anything. And then 12th grade, I decided to go on the golf team.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, between like 9th grade, I did 9th grade in Nampa. Then 9th grade, my parents got divorced. So then I went to go live in Utah with my mom. And then I tried to go live with my mom. I didn't actually go live with her until halfway through 10th grade. So I finished the back half of the year there, and then I did my 10th grade year in Utah, and then my 11th grade. And then after 11th grade, I was like, I want to go back to Idaho. And I was like, I want to do the golf team. And my dad's like, golf's not like an easy sport just to pick up and get on a team, right?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. I just want to get on a team. So
Yeah.
he's like, all right. I mean, if that's something you want to do, like I'll support you and I'll get you into these lessons. And, I'm sure you have till spring. This was summertime that I was telling him this. He's like, we'll work all through summer and, get you lessons in the wintertime indoors. I worked my butt off, and then, come tryouts, I ended up making the JV team and then played a couple games on JV and ended up going up to varsity. So,
Wow.
it wasn't like we were a crazy good golf team, right? So I'll set that, but I still had to perform. Like I was about a mid golfer at that point. So that was good for only less than a year of golfing experience, but that was about as much as my sports went. And then once I got out of high school, you had to start paying for golf. And then it's expensive.
That is an expensive sport. And it's funny, you did the ones I never tried baseball. I never did golf. But I wish I would have got more into golf because of networking and stuff. That's where a lot of business happens.
That's what my dad told me too. He's like, you need to learn how to golf because that's where all the business meetings take place.
Yeah.
That's what I try telling my daughters too now. I'm like, can you imagine being a good golfer and like there's not a lot of women in business that are good golfers, so you stick out,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool, man. I love golf now. I have met a lot of great people in golf.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing is even if you wanted to get into it,
You always can.
Yeah. Like my grandpa's 82 years old and still playing.
Yeah, it's not like, I was thinking about that the other day with music. I really miss like playing the French horn and some of those harmonic, beautiful parts, in a concert band. It's like, even if I wanted to do that right now, like that's not the same as sitting alone in my room, like trying to play French horn. Same thing with football. If you want to play football, you can't just like go join a team. But with golf, skiing, things like that, you can kind of just start.
Yeah, I like those solo sports. I'm also into archery. So
Oh, cool.
So it's like, I don't know, for some reason I've always been drawn to like these solo adventures, right?
Yeah.
It's just you against you, and those are all mental games, man.
Yeah.
I wasn't really a big person into mindset and mental stuff But man, getting into those sports and then recently stuff, huge. Because you have to forget about that last shot in golf. If you don't, it's going to affect everything forward. And there's so many correlations with that in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like diving into the weight loss journey and stuff that you've done, it's had to be pretty eye-opening and also challenging, but you've probably conquered so many demons doing that, you know?
Yeah, fitness has been the best therapist for me for sure. It's crazy how many neural pathways it'll just open up when you're working out. Like, I've worked through some stuff. I've shed some tears in some gyms. Like, luckily I'm there at 3 a.m, so no one's seeing me. But
Yeah.
you know, it's yeah, it's crazy, man. I would definitely recommend fitness to everybody, not just for the muscle side of it and the health side. It's just that mental clarity you get is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. So, what else did you do in like your childhood and stuff? I know you got into beatboxing.
Yeah, that's probably one of the pivotal moments of my life, which we could go down that story if you want to.
Let's hear it.
Around the time, like right before my parents got divorced, just to set the stage a little bit, my mom, dad, and sister and myself, we all loved music a lot, and it would always be on around the house. Definitely pop music, there was some Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Celine Dion, like that stuff was on a lot. And we'd all sing along. My sister has a beautiful voice, and I would try to sing along, but I was awful. I mean, now I can sing, but I mean, I was just ruining it a lot of the time. So I was always looking for some way to fit in where I wasn't going to ruin it. And my family, one night we were watching TV, and there was a concert on of NSYNC performing. It was during their No Strings Attached tour. They were at Madison Square Garden. I remember, Justin Timberlake walking out to the center of the stage and beatboxing, and ended up doing this whole freestyle session and battling with his actual drummer back and forth. The drums would go, then he would go, and it was just a really cool thing. So as a 9-year-old, I saw that. That was the first time I ever saw beatboxing, and I was hooked. I was just absolutely obsessed with it. I couldn't forget about it. I couldn't get it off my mind, and I was trying to do that a lot. And of course, that can be kind of frustrating too as a parent with little kids. If they start running around spitting and trying to beatbox, it's got to get somewhat annoying. But there's also this element of natural ability where I had more of the ability to do it than like my sister could or my parents. So I stuck with it, and my parents, knowing that I was super passionate about it, that next Christmas, a few months later, they got me that exact concert on VHS tape. We're getting older, so some people listening might not even know what that is, but VHS tape. So I would, as a little kid, during my parents' divorce and all the moves and stuff, 9 years old, I latched on to beatboxing like crazy. And that was like my thing. That was my comfort zone. I started watching Justin Timberlake, learning his whole routine, rewinding it, doing it over and over and over again. And I got pretty good. I could do every single thing that he was doing. And then I just started to develop my own style, and I would listen to Celine Dion and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all the bands that were big at that time, and I would hear the drum parts, and I would try to mimic it with my mouth. And it just has been long story short, which we could get into all the different pieces, but that still is something I do today. I don't know the math, but 9 years old and now I'm 32. I still beatbox every single day. And I still, that's been a huge superpower in my life that's unlocked a ton of opportunity. So
that's crazy how you just self-taught, man.
Yeah. Well, and YouTube made that easier later on. Like,
right. Rewinding VHSs is different than YouTube, though.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and I would even try to sound like the rewind. I was like trying to figure out how I could sound like. I was trying to figure out how I could sound like everything when I heard it. So
What was like the hardest part about doing all that?
Like mentally, or like the hardest thing to learn, or
Yeah, because I've seen people do like multiple different sounds at the same time. I'm sure it's such an art form. I don't even know where to even begin if I were to try, right?
Yeah. I think for me, the hardest thing, I mean, there's still beatboxing that I don't know how to do. I think sometimes it's just certain people have different gifts, there's no way to explain it. But one thing that was hard for me at first was trying to find my style, like what made me different. Cause there's a lot more beatboxers now, but some of them sound kind of the same. There's all those tutorials out there. People start to sound like who they did tutorials from. And then I never wanted to do that. Also, still to this day, I've never really used loop machines. I wouldn't be against it, but I've always felt like that's cheating in a way, because I can make multiple sounds at once without the technology help. And that to me was real beatboxing. The Michael Winslow's, the Reaps one, Korean effects. There's some big Tom Thumb. Tom Thumb was one of the beatboxers I looked up to the most. But they all have their own style, and I wanted to find mine. So,
did that open any doors early on? I know you said it was like 9 years old. Did you go to like any talent shows in school or anything like that?
Yeah, I went to everything I could. Everything. I mean, I was beatboxing in the line in the lunchroom growing up. I was beatboxing at school assemblies, school talent shows. I ended up going out by myself as a teenager, booking my own shows at county fairs, state fairs, talent competitions, online talent competitions, which is one of my first big breaks, I guess, where I met a celebrity. I got to meet Andy Grammer because I did a talent competition online where I won. So when he went to Pocatello, Stevens Performing Arts Center to do a concert, I got to open and like perform with him and some of the people there. So I've just been grinding that my whole life ever since I started it. So
was that like a new experience for you going in front of a huge crowd like that?
Yeah, the first time where it wasn't, I guess the first time where it was like more of a professional concert setting rather than a talent show at school or a bunch of drunk people at the fair.
Right.
So yeah, that was the first like real one, I think.
How old were you at that one?
Oh man, it's hard for me to piece all this together.
Like in school? Were you in school still?
I think I was a little bit older, like just about to graduate high school maybe, or just out of high school.
Okay, cool. And then you went on your mission right at 19? Is that right? Yeah?
Yeah.
So you was Oregon? What part of Oregon?
Everywhere. I was in 2 different missions there, so everything but Portland, basically. Everything south of Portland.
Good. That's a good place to avoid.
Correct. I mean, I did go there one time breaking the rules. Someone told us we had to really try voodoo donuts or whatever in Portland. But other than that, I was Salem, Eugene, Klamath Falls, the coast.
Dang. So you come back from your mission, then what do you do?
So this is another big half of my life, I guess. But during that whole time, I was grinding beatboxing, right?
Still on your mission?
Before my mission.
How was that? Did the beatboxing help you on your mission?
Like, yeah. It opened the doors, literally.
Right.
People would, like, if I used it as an icebreaker, it was usually a way to get some kind of conversation going. And
yeah.
So it's been, like I said, it's been a superpower in my life. But rewinding back to like all the high school stuff and growing up, during that whole time, I wanted to pursue beatboxing, and everyone in my life said, that's crazy. You're not going to make money doing that. So I had another plan, which was encouraged by my mom because, I grew up mostly from a single mom and we struggled financially and stuff. And she wanted us to go into something that was guaranteed to get a paycheck. And so I always wanted to help people. So I was like, oh, I'll be a nurse, and later I wanted to be a nurse anesthetist. And so I'd pursued that whole path at the same time where I was I was a lifeguard for 4 years. I was a CNA for 6 or 7 years, certified nursing assistant. I dabbled a little bit in learning phlebotomy, like right before I went into nursing. And now we're caught up again to the college thing. But in college, I was fully intending to go to nursing school and be a nurse. But that ended up going into one of the most depressing times of my entire life, where I felt like, I had put beatboxing on the back burner. I had put everything I was passionate about on the back burner, and I was going all in on this school thing, which just was crushing me. Like I tried so hard and I could not get good grades. I could not find any little inkling of interest in any of it, and got pretty low, which that's maybe a next phase if you want to get into it, about like mental wellness and depression. But
Yeah, man. So it sounds like you just put your hopes and dreams on the back burner for something that, like, you felt like your mom wanted you to have a stable job. So obviously medical field's pretty stable.
yeah, well, and everything, like, it was one of those, it's easier to look at in hindsight, right? But at the moment, what was happening was I was putting me on the back burner, and I was following the guidance of society norms, and it's kind of double, because it's not just like go to school, but it's also like I'm LDS, I'm Mormon, so I'm doing all the church stuff and going to school there at that specific school and following all of these really strict rules and stuff. And the more I pursued that, the more, I mean, not the gospel part of it, I love all the church, but going through that whole process of the school system was just like not for me.
Yeah.
So I was losing myself, and I got really, really, really depressed to a point where I was convinced that I wasn't meant to be here anymore. And that phrasing is really important, because it's not that I didn't want to be here anymore, it's that I thought I wasn't meant to anymore. Like, I was at the end of my rope. I had tried all the things that I know how to do, and I needed an answer from God, essentially. Like, I need you to show me point blank what the freak I need to do, because otherwise, I mean, that's when I started having like suicidal ideations and things like that. I didn't ever attempt, but I was thinking about that and having those kinds of thoughts. And this is probably the most pivotal moment of my life, but on one particular night, it was October 4th, 2015. I was home alone at this apartment. All my roommates were out, and I was laying on the floor with my dog, and I was just crying and praying, like, please, like, I need an answer or I'm out, kind of a thing. And my suicidal ideation thoughts kind of started to pivot into more of a good sign. Like, it kind of felt like God tapped into my brain, was like, hey, I'm going to take control of your thoughts now, because your thoughts are going to a bad place. And I just got this prompting, this overwhelming prompting to stay, to look over and love on my dog. And like, I started having thoughts of like, oh, who's going to feed you tomorrow morning if I'm not here, And in that moment, I got a call from my friend Sean, who we still talk like every single week. He called me and he invited me out to And for months at that, a late night McDonald's run, it was like literally midnight. Like, you know what? I'll go. I don't want to, but maybe this is the answer for what I was just praying for. So I went out with him and my friends, and they knew that I could beatbox, and they'd seen me kind of play around with this trick that I do where I beatbox with a McDonald's cup into the straw and make some cool noises.
Yeah.
But they asked me to do that, and it was just a loving environment. Everyone was encouraging, and they wanted me to do that. And so I did it. I beatboxed. They all pulled out their phones. The whole restaurant went quiet. Everybody, it felt like, pulled out their phones. They recorded it. And again, this is all clearer in hindsight, but my friend Sean showed me the video that he got, and he said, "Hey, do you want this video? Can I send you this video?" And I was like, "No, dude, that's freaking garbage. Why would anybody want that? That's the stupidest thing I've ever made." At that point, 1080p was like, you got to have high quality YouTube videos, whatever. So I saw it as a piece of shit. Honestly, I didn't want it. And then he's like, "Well, I'm going to post it. Can I post it?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, dude." So he puts it on his Facebook. He's got at that point maybe 300 or 400 friends or something. And that next day it was at like 56,000 views. And then by the end of that next day, it was over 1 million. By the end of that week, it was over 10 million. But, it ended up getting, 2 years later, past 2017, it was over 1 billion streams online of that video just going absolutely viral. But connecting it to the prayer, I could tell that wasn't me. That was 100% God intervening in my life, saying, you are meant to be here. You don't have all the answers. You don't need all the answers, but it's my plan, and I just need you to be here for it, and you don't know what you're capable of. And that put me on a whole wave of, motivational speaking, guesting on podcasts, and just opening my eyes to this whole new world of influence and impact. And that was another obsession moment, just like when I was beatboxing as a little kid. So really connected the dots for me. And even right now in my life, I don't have all the answers, but I look back at all these things as proof of like, I'm meant to be here and I'm meant to do some big things. I just got to be here for it and keep going.
That's awesome, man. That's such a beautiful story. I mean, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned at the darkest points in your life. A lot of people, I heard a really good saying, and it was like, when times are the darkest most, you think you're buried, but you've really just been planted. Right?
Deep.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's just crazy. There's so many times that you're so dark, and I've had that myself, and I think like I lost faith in God. I was like, how could God want me to go through this? How is this, like, there's no way there's a God, right? Like, and that was really dark. I mean, that lasted for me like for 20 years, but it took a long time, and then I finally realized like you have to go through those dark points, and those points are what'll help you help others,
right?
And it's a character building time, and it's testing you. And the beautiful thing about being at your lowest point is there's only a way up.
It's true.
It's really crazy though to look back at everything that you had to go through and be down at that lowest point, and just to think like you were really close and to giving up. And then like on the other side of that was just so much, right?
Right.
Do you ever think of where you would be at if you didn't get down at that point, and say you went through with, getting your career in nursing? You ever look at, I mean, it's weird to think about, but do you ever think where you would have been if you wouldn't have had that moment?
I don't usually think about it, but if I am right now, I feel like I probably would have, I don't envision myself completing school. So I don't think I would have become a nurse. I think I would have dropped out of school probably. Just figured out some other job to pursue or something, and probably not be as emotionally intelligent and emotionally aware as I am now of things. Because now I don't think I could ever be at that level of low again. I mean, I'm not going to tempt.
Right.
I'm not gonna tempt God to like put me back in another low moment like that. You could always get low, but I have, like, at that point, I didn't feel like there was anything. And now with all the knowledge I have, no matter how depressed I get, I know that there's something around the corner. I know that there's something. So I learned a lot of lessons And so I think to answer your question, I don't know necessarily what would have happened, but I don't think I'd have the kind of knowledge and clarity that I have now.
I was going to ask you, after that clip went viral, how was your life like then? I mean, it's not like the virality made you go, but actually knowing that people cared and things get a lot better after that then?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so much, but I feel like for a long time, even going back to even when I was little and I told you people would not accept that I wanted to pursue beatboxing. I thought that was crazy. I was an idiot, right? And I should pursue something normal. That's a long time of feeling alone in what you're building. And so it felt like there was just all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, people see it now. People accept me. People don't think I'm crazy. In fact, they want to pay me thousands of dollars to come beatbox on stage at their business corporate events, right? Or something. And so there was like this feeling of acceptance, but also probably the biggest thing for me, and this is still what drives me, it became about impact. Like for me, it wasn't about beatboxing. Oh, I love to beatbox. It was more about how my beatboxing made people feel, how I could create, like a magician does a trick and people's jaws drop, right? That's the kind of awe-inspiring moments I wanted to create. But now I have this story that goes with it that saves other people. And I know that that's happened because I've had times where people have talked with me about how like their kid almost, called it quits and their kid stayed or they stayed, or some of the messages I got, especially during that time. But even since then from doing my podcast and stuff, like even if you're not the person with millions of subscribers or whatever, you never know who's listening. And so, yeah, for me, it became a mission, a calling of like, the more I show up, the more I'm a tool in God's hands and the more I help other people, which at the end of the day was what I always wanted to do. So I'm not helping people as a nurse, but I'm helping people in other ways.
Yeah. I remember you telling a story on another podcast about you're out in public and there was a mom and a kid that recognized you. Is that right?
Yeah. So that was in Rexburg when I was going to college, and I was actually, that was actually before my viral video.
Oh,
so
really?
I was in a really depressed state. I was trying to do like cover videos and things like that with my sister and my friends on YouTube, do, music covers, song covers. At the time I had what I felt like was zero engagement. I didn't have anybody looking at my YouTube channel. And so that's just to set the stage. But yeah, I'm out at my favorite Chinese food restaurant and my sister, some friends were eating, and this mom and her daughter walk in and they come over to the table and they're like, "Hey, can we, talk with you before you leave?" I was just like, who are these people? I'm like, sure, what's this about? And they're like, it's okay, we'll talk to you after. We don't mean to interrupt. So they go sit down, they start eating their food, whatever, ordering food. And then I completely space it. And I go to leave the restaurant later and they kind of the mom stood up and like chased me down and was like, wait, don't leave. Like, this is really important. And she proceeded to pull out a napkin and a pen from her purse, and she asked me if I would sign it for her daughter. And I was like, why? Like, what's this for? And she explained to me that her daughter at the time had some kind of like bone marrow cancer and was going through all these medical treatments, going back and forth between, Idaho to Primary Children's Hospital in Utah. And one of her favorite things to do at night when she was going to bed and laying in her hospital bed was to watch my sister and I on YouTube, like do our song covers and stuff. And that just, I kept my composure there, but literally after I walked out of the restaurant, my sister and I just cried in the parking lot. We were like, oh my gosh, like we're nobody. We have 20 people that see our stuff, But this girl lays in bed and watches us at night and thinks we're the coolest thing around. So it's just a message of it doesn't, one thing I talk about a lot in analytics, you have the engagement, you have the insights, you have the likes, you have the comments, shares, whatever. There's nothing for impact, and you don't know who sees it. And you just have to trust that you're influencing somewhere. And then later, sometimes I feel like we are blessed with seeing the result, and we're blessed with a full circle moment is what I like to call it, where we get to see how that impacted actually came full circle, or that impact came full circle. And those are blessings. Those are sweet and tender mercies. They motivate us to keep going.
Have you ever had anybody reach out to you in a moment of need because of everything they've watched?
Not so much. I mean, I've had people I don't know message me and say how like a podcast episode resonated, or how me speaking at a certain event helped them. But as far as people actually reaching out in need, I feel like mainly that's been, in my friend groups and stuff like that, where, I try to keep really authentic and good people in my circle. So, we're all boy, girl, married, not married, whatever. Like the friend group I have is, you can call me literally any time. And if it's 3 a.m, if I hear it, I'm going to answer it and help how I can, and I think they would do the same.
I think having 4 quarters is always better than 100 pennies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a good analogy.
To keep my circle small.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. I think the impact thing is huge too, because it's not just you impacting that person. If you can help that person change their generations below them, like you have endless amounts of impact, right? Like that's how I always think of why I wanted to switch from my career path that I'm in to now helping people in fitness. Is I know for me, I got a lot of my bad eating habits from parents, right? So if I can help someone that can help their kids, that's who knows how much that will do for impact for them. And that's huge. I think that that's awesome what you're doing, dude.
Thank you. Yeah. And I don't have all the answers, like even legit right now in my life. I was telling you before we hit the cameras, and hit the mics going, I have no idea. Like I'm currently changing or thinking about changing, my podcast. I'm writing a book that I'm trying to get really clear on the message. I have no idea what's even next for me, but I know that I'm being called to something, and I'm showing up for it and just trying to live aligned. So
it's hard to have that blind faith.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So what else did you do with your beatboxing career? What kind of doors did that open as well after the whole McDubstep thing?
Yeah, so when that video went viral, I feel like it was a glimpse from God, like, hey, this is the kind of life you can have if you keep going and keep, building the foundation and working hard and stuff, because it did glimmer out, or simmer out. That was pre-COVID and everything. And for a couple years, I rode that wave of like easily getting booked for things. And then when COVID happened, live events stopped. People stopped their podcasts, advertising budgets, whatever. Like everything fell apart. And I was telling you when we were walking in here, I used to deliver pizzas around right here, because after all of that, I got hit right back to freaking nothing and working at Pizza Hut and Domino's delivering pizzas and trying to figure out how to rebuild. And that was another really low moment in my life, but I knew that I was going to make it through. Anyway, during that time where I was riding the wave, so many doors opened. Definitely, it opened the door to motivational speaking. And I love networking and connecting with people. Sharing this kind of a message to audiences where they're receiving it and doing something about it. I started my podcast, which soon it'll be 6 years old, and that has introduced me to so many people. It really put more meaningfulness into my life and gave me more drive. But then as far as career opportunities or like cool things, I ended up getting a McDonald's commercial, which was sweet. They hired me to go to LA. I was there for 3 days. We were just filming a 15-second commercial, but I was there for 3 days, just chilling basically. Did a McDonald's commercial that was streamed on internet, or streaming platforms like YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, wherever there were ads. And I ended up working. I got a McDonald's internship. They were trying to help me in school because during that time too, I dropped the nursing thing completely and I switched majors to communication, social media marketing, advertising. And I got an internship with an ad agency that works with McDonald's in Nashville, Tennessee. So I lived there for a little under a year. Lots of speaking events. Got to open for Damon John from Shark Tank. The video went on Steve Harvey's show, Ridiculousness. It was all over the place. That's
awesome. I remember you were telling me too that you do a lot of motivational speaking for dentists. Yeah. And I was like, why dentists?
That's a good question. That's been pretty recent in the last couple of years. And a couple important factors. Number one, my mom has been working in dentistry my whole life in their front offices. So she's been office manager. She's learned all their systems, and now she's got her own successful business where she's a consultant and coach and goes in and works and helps build their practices. So she knows dentistry inside and out, and she's become kind of an influencer in that space, so to speak, where now people reach out to her to come to their events and all that. So she was a big part of that and like getting my foot in the door with that industry, I guess. And then the other big part of it is she and I both we know dentists, unfortunately, who have taken their own lives. And one in particular happened a couple years ago. It was really impactful because he is a close family friend, and it was a pivotal moment for both of us. It was a hard thing to get over, but it opened my eyes to how big of an issue that is in dentistry. And it's all over the place, but dentists is like number 2 or 3 or something as far as most suicides in that industry. So I felt called to like, okay, if I have this message of mental wellness and hope and motivation, I'm not a dentist, but I can still share that message to dentists. And it was pretty well received. And so the last 2 years or so, I've had a few events where I was speaking at dental conferences.
How many of those do you think you did?
I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 or something. This year, I haven't lined any up yet, but again, I'm trying to get clear on which way I want to go. I wouldn't be opposed to doing dental conferences, but
what is it about the dental industry that makes people suicidal? I mean, I know that, like law enforcement, military, they both have it, especially like once they leave the departments and they don't
like
really
the
have
PTSD or like the things they saw, or what do you mean?
Like usually it's when they leave. I've heard like when they retire, and then you usually die within like 5 years from what I've heard. So I don't know if that's because they don't know anything other than, because usually you've done it for 30 years is a 20 to 30 years for those things. So I don't know if they just don't know what to do with life, and then that's when things happen. But dentistry just seems
kind of random.
Yeah. So I didn't know if you've looked into like anything on that.
Yeah, and it's something I've spoken about at these events, and I'm going to be maybe taking some of these examples too and putting them in my book that I'm starting to write. But they lose themselves in the work, I think is the best way to put it, and they have their whole path, their whole plan laid out in front of them for so long, all the way up until, they're married, they have kids, they have their dental practice or are working in a dental practice. and they start doing the day in, day out stuff. And it just becomes so routine and so planned. And, you know, it is what it is, but they are not business owners either. So then they get into this space of operation where they're like, hey, I know how to deal with this dude's teeth, but I don't know how to manage this office. I don't know how to talk to, like, hire people, grow the business, do anything like that. And so they get just an insane amount of pressure on their shoulders too. And unfortunately, we live in a world too where people will try to sue professionals of that nature, you know, doctors, lawyers, dentists, of every kind. Anyone who the common man would say is rich, they try to sue them or get after them for every single legal issue that you can imagine. So there's just a lot of pressure that they're under, and they've completely lost themselves. And if you ask them, what are you passionate about? They don't know how to answer. And if you ask them what they love to do, they don't know how to answer. And if they do answer, it's usually, you know, oh, well, be with my wife and kids and go skiing or something. It's like, but what do you as an individual like to do? And what do you remember what you liked doing as a little kid? Do you remember any of this? And they lose themselves completely to a point where, similarly to how I felt, I believe, in that college, you know, suicidal ideation moments that I was having, I put everything of myself on the back burner to the point where I was ready to call it. And I think they do that too in their own ways. And that's why I became passionate about, like, helping businesses and brands of any kind really figure out a way to put their passion, their story, their authenticity into what they're doing. Because you shouldn't have to quit being a dentist, but you should be a happier dentist.
So you just want them to have a life outside of work.
Yeah, a life outside of work, or integrating it, you know, like if you love bicycling, for example, make your lobby bicycle themed, you know, like, because the other question dentists always have, and chiropractors, whoever, is like, how do I stand out from every other dentist? How do I mean, every dentist is like the same. It's like, well, take the things that make you unique and put it into your workplace. And if you are more aligned and if you are more authentic, you're going to attract the right team members. You're going to attract the right clients or customers that you're looking for, patients. You're going to be happier day in, day out when you're there. So
are these things that you learned when you switched your major and went to marketing and different things? What was it? Social media and marketing?
Yeah, social media marketing. But also I think most of it's just been my own experience of conversations, you know, like talking with people. You hear what works, you hear what doesn't work, you hear what makes people miserable, you hear what makes people happy. And when you lose yourself, when you forget yourself, when you are living so not aligned, you will be depressed.
Where do you find your alignment?
I find it and this is a recent thing I'm really doubling down on, in prayer and spirituality and building my relationship with God, and then sticking to the things I am passionate about, being receptive of that. I mentioned that to you a little bit before we started recording, was this concept of breadcrumbs, right? Now the listeners, if they're, if they've listened to this point of the show, they'll know my story. Me picking up beatboxing at 9 years old is what I like to call my first breadcrumb. And then since then, there's been more, right? There's been the public speaking. There's been the finding that I am drawn to meaningfulness. There's been podcasting, loving band over sports. Like, there's all these things that if you look back and reflect and add them up, the more I pick up those breadcrumbs or the things that I'm drawn to, the more I stay aligned. And it's when you veer away from those things that you're naturally drawn to that everything can fall fast.
How does someone find their breadcrumbs or their authentic voice?
I think looking back is the first thing, looking back and doing the reflection exercises, right? Like, what did you love to do as a kid? Like, for me, it was beatboxing, but for someone else, it might be drawing, right? No matter how little the thing is, what things are they interested in? If tomorrow the alarm clock goes off for you and you wake up in the morning, what's your ideal day? What time of day are you wanting to wake up? What things are you doing that absolutely light you up, fire you up, get you pumped up for the day? What are those things, and how can you harness that, and better understand that? And I personally feel like through prayer, you can get really clear on those things. But yeah, reflection is always the first thing. And then just understanding that storms, life's storms, when crap happens, I like to think those leave some kind of breadcrumb too. And I also think that that's how you can tell when another one's coming. When everything falls apart, when everything is at its worst, there's something about to drop, and you got to be here for it. It's like me with the viral video. Like, the day before or the night of that recording that video, I was ready to call it. The next day I was like, 1 million views. Oh my gosh. Like, what am I going to do? And everything changed for me. Like, that happened. No one can plan for it. No one can predict it. It's just life is going to happen, and you got to be here for it and pick up the breadcrumbs.
I think having faith is a huge one too, because when those storms come, you understand that there's just a plan for this and there's a reason you're going through it.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally.
That's the whole meaning of the show, right? Rain brings growth. You have to go through the rain to get the growth on the other side. And it sucks while you're in it. Nobody likes the rain, but you know that there's going to be growth on the other side and you're going to be better off on it. There's always, if you want growth, you have to face that discomfort. You have to face the things that you've been avoiding. One of my favorite sayings I've heard is, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And every time I've ever thought about that and I've thought about what I've been avoiding, it's 100% correct. You just got to find those new level ups in life. There's always going to be a new character to take on, or, like a video game, there's a new bad guy at every level you go up. So it's never going to be an easy ride. And once it becomes easy, then you're just going downhill. It's just it's a hard place to get to, though, like to understand that you need to be looking for those hard times. You need to embrace those. You need to run towards your fears, not away from the storm.
Yeah, and it's hard because it's the hard truths a lot of the time, right? And people have a hard time facing those truths and then doing something about it. It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
One, I'll tell you right now, and we'll talk about this after too, because I'm curious about like your services and stuff. But like, I'm a big dude, and recently I've been thinking like, that's one of those things I'm avoiding, right? So then I have to sit with my demons, and I have to understand truthfully where I'm at, and then do something about it. And that's the part where most people are like, I'd rather not. So
yeah, the gym is the number one, like a feedback loop, right? Like you're gonna be facing pain, but the only way your body will literally get bigger for like muscle wise is to break down those muscles first so they can rebuild. Right. Like you have to go through that pain. That's my whole fitness is called mod fitness. So it's mindset, ownership, discipline. And the whole meaning behind that is like, you have to have your mindset in the right place to control the present, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have the ownership to realize that whatever was behind you is your fault. Like you can't blame other people. You need to take ownership for your own life. Even if your parents did give you these bad eating habits, like you're an adult now, like you had all these years, it's still your fault. Stop blaming others. It's ownership, right? And that's the only way you're going to get better. And then the discipline is just so that you can control your future. You have to do what you have to do every single day and keep that discipline so that you can have the future you want. So it's huge, man. Like the fitness thing, I never was into fitness before, like last year. I had buddies that were huge into it and always told me like, hey Matt, let's go to the gym, let's get muscles like when we were young and stuff, right? And they always told me, and I was like, yeah, you're probably right, but I wasn't doing it. But the thing is that until it was my idea, I wasn't going to listen to anybody. And that's the thing with anything. Like, I used to be a big drinker. People would tell me all the time, Matt, you should probably stop drinking. I was like, I'm fine, whatever. But until I decided that I want to quit drinking, and I realized the bigger reasons, my kids, my future, I wasn't going to make any of these changes. So that's the hard part with anything, not just fitness, is the person's going to want to have to make those changes that are uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. And it's, at the drinking thing, I've been seeing this guy on TikTok recently who like helps people stop drinking. And he does these videos where he'll put up like 6 cans of Coca-Cola and be like, what if I drank all 6 of these tonight? Everybody would say that that's so unhealthy, that's so gross, whatever. He's like, but what if and he puts a pack of beer on the table. He's like, what if I drank all of these tonight? Oh, now it's just a good time and everyone's chill with it, He's like, so there's like these societal norms too, where it makes certain things so accepted, and then it has to be an internal battle. Like you said, people, whatever they're struggling with as individuals, they themselves have to want it. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
And I think the only way that you can want it is to hit rock bottom.
Yeah. You have to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is there's a lot of people that coddle people and don't let them hit rock bottom because they're trying to be kind to them. But which version of the person do you want to be kind to? Like the version that they have potential, or like their current person, right? Like that's how I have to think with my kids, is of course they want to have donuts and they want to have sugary cereals and they want to have all these other sweets around the house. But do I want to be kind to this person that they are now? Or do I want to be kind to the person they're going to be later in life? Because I know I don't want them to have to face the same struggles that I had to face and go through the weight loss and everything that I had to go through and all those struggles. I'd rather teach them the ways growing up so it just becomes a part of them. Right? Like, probably some people are with their faith, right? So it becomes part of them, whereas other people have to find it on their own. So if you just give them that environment, and they don't like it sometimes, right? But you have to just remember which version you're being kind to.
Right. Yeah. I never looked at it that way before. Well, and it's probably, we have very different perspectives maybe, or lessons, because, totally different journeys, but also like I'm not married, I don't have kids, and I don't look at it from that perspective of like helping shape somebody else's whole life. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Well, also too, like, success is something that you have to create. It's not something that's found. So I think the only thing that I can control was just my body, right? And I wanted a more successful life, but so many people have told me that your outward body is just an internal reflection, which is true, because I was totally messed up inside, man. Like, I could hide it really well. I was a funny guy.
Yeah.
But I was torn up, and I just kept sweeping stuff under the rug, and it would go away. And I mean, there's been some pivotal moments in my life that brought me back to faith, because I was like, there's no way that this is like a coincidence, right? And then you realize that there is a bigger plan. And you're like, well, if there's a bigger plan, what am I doing destroying my body, right? I mean, I want to be here as long as I can. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the kid thing is different. If you're single, and you have to find something that pushes you, because the internal stuff doesn't really work.
Sometimes, yeah, like even like I have a goal to walk 2 miles a day with my dog Libby, and yesterday I went even longer. I just kept walking and walking, but I felt like I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it to give her a good walk. So I literally, like, I have this goal that Libby deserves a walk every day, and I'm gonna take her. But I benefit from that, Well,
if Libby had a 7-day prescription for medicine, she's 90% more likely to get the full prescription than if you had a 7-day. Just from the facts. Usually, like, people are more likely willing to take care of their dog than they are to take care of themselves.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, connecting to what we talked about earlier too about story and stuff, like these kinds of things, they're just the little things, the building blocks that will be your superpower, right? Like if I were to look into the future and I lose a bunch of weight, right? Now all of a sudden I can write a book about that. Now all of a sudden I can do a podcast about that. And so these things that you have to tackle and overcome, they're monstrous, regardless of what it is for people. They're monstrous, but then once you do it, it becomes like your whole platform.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. Once you can control your body and your mind, you can do anything.
Right.
Like, it just unlocks so many different possibilities that you didn't even think were possible. Not just because you have a good body, but it's like the cornerstone. You have to have the discipline to go to the gym every day. You have to have the discipline to eat what you need to eat. And then, you know, doing these things every single day and not seeing results, but just having faith in the process. And then take that over in anything else in life. You got business, you know, there's things you have to do every day. Your social media accounts, there's things you have to do every single day. You may not see it right away, but like for me, I made this one post. It was just like a before and after picture of when I got to meet Cam Hanes. And I just posted it. And it was like 4 or 5 weeks later, like Cam Hanes had seen it and then reshared it. And I had like nobody even like it before, but I was just posting it. And it just was like, wow, it's crazy to think that just because nothing happens right now, like it's simmering in life, you know, like you were saying earlier, it's out there. You just have to at least do the little things every single day, stack those little wins. That's one of my biggest things I try and tell all my clients. Like, don't think about all the weight you want to lose. Like, just worry about these little things you have to do every single day.
Yeah.
And just win the day. Once you've won the day, stack enough days, you'll win the week. You stack enough weeks, you'll win the month. Win enough months, you'll win the year. Enough years, you'll win your lifetime. But it all just starts with little things every day. And I think too many people see like the big goal at the end and don't just take it one step at a time. Don't try and climb the mountain all at once, right?
Right. Which is easy to see when all you see online is, you know, people's success stories and all the cool things people are up to. It makes you see the mountain and you're just like, oh, I want to go do that right now. And it's like, well, there's so much that happens before, you know, and that's why it's celebrating you and just knowing that you are enough, because the end of the day, you have to be comfortable with yourself and creating these things, not because of what other people are going to think. Those people, you know, whoever your audience, they're not going to see or care about all of this crap you're going through. They're going to see and care about the successes, which I did learn a little bit about that with the viral video, because for years, nobody cared that I was working on this beatboxing stuff. But when the video went viral, it was, you know, girls messaging me from high school being like, I always knew you could do it. You know, you're like, okay, yeah, you haven't talked to me in years, but okay.
Yeah.
And people will come out of the freaking woodwork when you start succeeding, or when you start especially getting any kind of money for what you're doing. People they'll flood into you because now they care. And you have to be comfortable with yourself. I don't know why this is popping in my head, but do you think, or do you know country music that well?
Mm-hmm.
Or
a little bit, yeah.
Do you know Bailey Zimmerman?
Uh-huh.
So he's one of my favorite artists. But he has a song out that's called New to Country. Have you heard that?
Mm-mm. I'm just thinking of the Rock and the Hard Place, I think is.
Oh, yeah. So he's got one called New to Country, and basically the approach that song takes, at least if I'm understanding it right, who knows, maybe Bailey Zimmerman will see this, you know, we'll get to ask him for real what it means. But for me, when I look at the lyrics, I feel like he's basically saying that he's been there all along. And so one of the lyrics is like, you can call me what you want essentially, but you can't say that I'm new to country, you know, because I've been in country my whole life. But he was experiencing that, being an up and coming artist, or like a new artist that all of a sudden just randomly popped on the scene. And it's like, to the world, yes, but to him, he's been doing that shit forever, and he's not new to any of it.
Yeah.
But that's not the way that it's perceived.
Yeah, Justin Waller's got a saying too. He's like, work, 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 no results, but I'm a little bit better. Work, 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 no results, but I'm a little bit better. Work, 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 no results. And he's just, and one more time, he's like, work, 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 success, boom. Everybody thinks you're an overnight success, but they don't see all the times that you haven't made it and all this grinding you were doing. Dan Pena's got another one, and it's like, success is kind of like when you get pregnant. Everybody says congratulations, but they don't know how many times you got screwed.
Yeah, that's funny. But it's true. I mean, that's the thing, is like, people are there for the moment that it's like, you know, now you've made it kind of a thing, but they're not watching. They don't care about the hard places. However, I will say the kind of contrary, or the opposite of that is, and this is going to be my prediction also, I don't know how much social media you talk about on this podcast, but a social media trend that I think is going to happen in 2025 and beyond is a rise, and which is already happening, but more of a rise in authenticity and sharing what's real. And so on the opposite end, there are people who do care, but it's got to be the kind of people who are where you're at, or where you've been, who want to get to where you're at or where you're going. So people do care. They want to see the real crap. They want to see the real you. They want to see the work. They want to be inspired and know that they're not alone. And use your story as fuel to help them, you know? So there's that really good side of it. But from more of a mass population perspective, most people, they don't care about that part. They just want to reach out once you've made it.
Yeah, Gary Vee is huge on that. Like, he says, show everybody every aspect of your life. Like, if you know, leave your kids out if you want, or whatever, right? But like, show them that you're failing, show them that you're struggling, show them the grind you're doing up till midnight, up at 4 a.m. the next morning. Like, don't just show them the glamour and everything else. And I can definitely attest to that. And I'm glad that I was taking pictures along the way when I started losing weight.
Yeah.
And like, just being able to show my clients, like, I'm not putting you through anything that I didn't do, bro. Like,
yeah,
like, you can look back. I was in the gym. I always put timestamps on them. Like, I don't want you guys thinking I'm not doing anything I wouldn't ask you guys to do. I'm up in the morning. I'm there at 3 a.m. I'm putting this in. I got to go to work after this. I got 4 kids. It's not like I have this glamorous life and I make time, right?
Right.
But I used to be this big guy too. I wasn't always in shape, and I'm still not like exactly where I want to be, but I'm not always been where I need to. And I think the downfalls that I think a lot of people try and avoid are actually the things that would qualify you to help more people, because they can see that you're human, have the same struggles as them. That's what they're going to trust you now. Like, they'll take advice from you. Like, an alcoholic is more willing to take advice from a former alcoholic than he is someone that's never touched alcohol, right?
It's true.
So it's like, those things that you think are going to disqualify you, that's the people that you need to be reaching out to, is those same people that you've gone through.
Yeah. Yeah. Which that reminds me of Jelly Roll too. I worked in radio for 5 years, I guess, in total, but the last few years I was working here at a local country station. I was one of the country radio personalities, and I got to meet a lot of the artists, which was sweet. Jelly Roll was different than a lot of the other artists that I met, because he was just so much more real and honest about stuff. But in the short time that I had with him, one thing he told me was, look, your passions are for you at first until it gives you a platform or a way to express yourself, right? But then there's a switch where your passions are for other people and saving the people who are where you used to be. That was something that Jelly Roll told me on a walk from his bus to the stage, just something super short, but super impactful. And you can see that he lives that. You can see that he's doing that. And gosh, I'd be curious to talk with Travis about Jelly Roll's journey and stuff too. Because you both know more of like how the prison system is and stuff like that and what maybe Jelly Roll lived through. But yeah, it's spot on. What we're pursuing, right, is for us at first, but then it becomes about impact.
Yeah, Jelly Roll, I think, is such a huge influence just because he's so authentic.
Yeah.
Right? Like I watched a podcast with him when he was on with Jay Shetty, and he goes into his prison life, and now he went in, I think it was like 15. Got charged as like an adult, and, he just completely open with it and doesn't hide it, and he tells everybody like now he's not even allowed to buy a house in certain states, I think, because he's a felon, and he's like just wanting to help people out.
Yeah, well, and he had issues with getting booked certain concerts where he legally couldn't go. So I don't know if that was something I heard, on his documentary that I watched, or if it was something else. But he was, obviously hugely successful and getting booked everywhere, but there's a lot of places that want him where he can't legally go. And so I don't know if that's still the case or if he finally found like workarounds for that. But yeah, he's had to face that still, even though he's a celebrity and everything.
Yeah, it was cool to follow him. I watched him out at Stoney's Roadhouse when he came, and that was a small venue, but he had set the record there. I think it was like 5,000 people.
Wow.
And then we had just barely went in August and seen him. It's cool to see him go from a small stadium from a small venue to a huge stadium now.
Yeah, and he remembers those places too, by the way. I talked with him. He loves Idaho, right? And he loves the reception he got at Stoney's. He loves the reception he got at the Boise Music Festival. He's come back, I think, a couple times since then, and now he's coming back again with Post Malone.
Oh yeah, this Albertson Stadium.
Yeah,
yeah,
and like, these artists, when Idaho shows up for them, they prioritize it. It's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Speaking of music, do you have any songs that have ever just really stuck with you? Like have a lot of meaning?
My all-time favorite band is One Republic, and pretty much all of their songs. But as far as a specific, I feel like their song Stop and Stare was a really big one for me all growing up, carried me through some tough times. And then also I like punk, alternative stuff too. I like Mayday Parade. There's one of those songs called Still Breathing that I really love too. But music is a for sure go-to for me.
Yeah, it's always gets you down to this, out of the funks. And like for me, I know when I was going through my whole changes and everything last year, when I started deciding I wanted to change for my kids, NF came out with a new, like the whole album Hope.
I love NF.
I've listened to that whole album, but like the exact song of Hope too was just crazy because there's like a lyric in there where he's talking about like 30 years of running, 30 years of, and I had just turned 30.
Have you seen the video to that one?
Yeah.
That part though, I know exactly the part you're talking about. The way they video that too, where when he turns this way, his face is clean, and when he turns this way, it's got the makeup on. It's like the two voices going on in his head.
It's so true too, because he's touching on. It took me a while to figure out like what that song was, but he's talking to himself.
Yeah,
and it's like, all right, now it's our time. We're gonna just do what we want, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's all authenticity, and yeah, I think music is a huge saver for a lot of people. That's another thing with Jelly Roll was him and his mom, right?
Yeah,
his mom was like a drug addict, but that's all they had together was listening to music, and it's crazy what it can do to connect people.
Yeah. Well, you meet them where they're at, and connect with them in their pain and whatever they're going through, even if you don't know them, right? Which is pretty cool that music can do that. I will say, NF, love that guy. Also, his producer, one of the guys that makes the music, Tommy Prophet. I loved what he does too with like the Christmas songs and all that, and then in Christian music. And then Citizen Soldier, they were here in Boise too recently. They're not as known as some of these massive artists, but what I love about him is he's actually a trauma therapist. And so he hears all these people's stories of the crap they go through, and then he puts, exactly what needs to be put in songs to like meet people where they're at.
Yeah, have you been able to meet NF? Did you meet him too?
I never met NF, but I did meet Citizen Soldier, that band, when they came through just a couple months ago.
I'll have to check them out. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, they're awesome. It's like, it's a little bit more rock style. I don't know, alternative, but it's really powerful lyrics.
So what's next for you, Parker? What are we working on this year? You do a goal list this year or anything?
Yeah, well, and speaking of him being a trauma therapist, I will say, and this is the first time I can ever say this on a podcast because it's the first time I've ever really done this, but for the last few months, I've been going to therapy. Everything in my life has always been alone. Like, I got this, I can tackle this, and going to therapy has been absolutely game changing for me, and helping me work through a lot of past trauma and just stuff to give me more clarity. So I've been really focused on therapy, personal development, getting my mind right, prayer, building my relationship with God. Those are like the most important things to me right now going into this year. And I don't want to overwhelm myself with goals. I just want to keep on that path of getting my mind right. I am doing the walking 2 miles a day, trying to take my dog Libby out every single day. I'm curious to get more involved in losing weight and being more mindful of that stuff. As far as like career goals and stuff, I almost have not even thought about it as much because I want to get me right. And I feel like the more I do that, the more the other things are just kind of going to become more clear or start to align for me.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you can do like that self-audit and see really where you want to go with life. You know what I mean? A lot of people just do things because they think that's what they need to do, and they don't really care about what they want,
Yeah.
To put yourself on the front line and realize that you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because you can't take care of others unless you're fully taking care of yourself. That's a cool thing that you've been able to work through.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely not perfect at it. I'm trying. Financially, that makes it very hard when you're just focused on that and not like career things. But like I said, I think the other things might align. The more happy I am or confident I am, the more I can easily obtain a client or something for my services or get booked for a speaking engagement. You never know. But one thing, I guess it could be summed up into these 2 words. My goal for 2025 is to trust God. And I don't think I've ever done that in my life. I think that's a new thing for me. And looking back on, that time in 2015 when I was super depressed, it's like it's easier now in hindsight to know why all of that happened. And it took me 10 years to realize that I need to stop trying to pick up the weights of everything and just let, God take the wheel for a little bit and see what happens.
During 2015, had you fallen away from the church?
No, I was still, in It's funny. I actually have not been going to church for the last like 4 years, but I've been very like right now. I feel called to like just pray more, build my relationship with God. I probably will end up going back to church on Sundays. But at that time, no, I was really in the church, but I just felt like it was checking a box. I didn't feel like I was there mentally for like the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've all been there. Right now my kids they're talking about like wanting to get baptized. And same thing, I just want to make sure that they know why they want to do it, not just because friends are doing it, you know? Because I'm pretty sure when I got baptized, it was pretty much because it was like a call of passage when you were that age.
Yeah, it was not an option for me.
Yeah, I don't feel
I mean, my parents said, "Are you going to get baptized?" And I was like, "Yeah." Then I did it.
It was like something just to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I want my kids to understand what's behind that and that it's their call. I'm not going to force it upon them. I don't want them to, not like it's a mistake or anything, but I want them to realize why they're doing it.
Yeah.
That's where we're at too this year, is just putting more faith in God and trying to become more aligned with where we should be, family prayers, just giving, reading the Bible, and just trying to really understand where we should be and how we need to be good leaders for our family. My wife and I, we just had our annual meeting this last Friday, and we actually used Travis's frameworks to like plan out our annual goals. So that was actually pretty cool.
Which I watched that whole episode that you had with Travis. It was awesome.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
His story is so inspirational, and everything he's been able to do and everybody he's been able to pick up. Like the part where he was talking about, when we're kids and like someone's learning to walk or something, you help pick them up and get them going the right direction. He does that with people all the time. And that's just a cool way of living. And I aspire to, I can do that in my own ways right now. And I try to do that, but I aspire to just stay on that path and keep doing those things as I get older.
Yeah. Yeah, Travis is a cool dude. I learned a lot from him. I texted him too. I sent him the Google Doc. I was like, appreciate it. You know, he's like, that nothing makes me happier to see that, it actually followed through, because I think a lot of people, they'll learn things, but they don't apply them.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've read a lot of books, and there's a lot of stuff I've read and then just totally forgotten, didn't apply it, right?
Right.
So most times people just need to be reminded and not taught.
Mm-hmm.
We know a lot of stuff we need to do. We just need to be reminded.
Yeah. And I'll say this, on the topic of, because you mentioned getting more aligned in faith and stuff. I don't know what it is. I feel like maybe you'll relate, maybe people listening will relate. I feel like God is waking some of us up right now. And I genuinely feel like more of us are feeling called than ever. And it's important to listen to those feelings and those promptings and those ideas and to start doing things about it. And I think if we do that, if we listen and just go for it, we're all going to be better off.
I think it gives off a certain energy too, and you're just attracted to those people.
Yeah.
I had a guest on here, and she was telling me all about energies, and I'm a big believer, man, like energies and everything's frequencies, and you can pick up on people, right?
Yeah.
Like there's people out there that you can just tell like they need help, or maybe you should just talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just opens up conversation. And next thing you know, you guys are friends, and now they can tell you some of the stuff that they were going through, and you can help them. But
yeah,
just had a weird feeling just to go talk to them,
Yep.
It happens to be a couple times at the gym. I'm just like, I'm gonna go talk to that guy. Next thing I know, they come on the podcast. I'm like,
yeah.
All right, man.
You never know. I mean, at that Citizen Soldier concert I went to, I had a moment like that where I talked to a guy in the crowd who I went to the concert by myself. You could tell he went to the concert by himself, but the dude was crying to like some of the songs that they were playing. And I don't know, I probably will never get the full circle moment, right? But I went up to him and was just like, dude, I just want to give you a hug, man. And I gave him a hug. And we talked for like 2 minutes, but it was just like, you're enough, dude. Like, I'm glad you came out to this show and saw this band, and like, I hope you go away from this and just go crush it. Like, that's all it was. But you never know the impact that could have. So just like you said, even if it's at the gym or wherever, at the grocery store, if you get that prompting, if you get that pull, listen to it. And you'll try. This is an experiment for everybody, right? You'll try to listen to it and be mindful of the thoughts that come into your mind in that moment. They're all going to try to detour you. Every single one of them. I remember that guy's name. His name's Dylan, the guy at the concert that I talked to. And before I went to talk to him, it was, what is everybody in here going to think if I just go hug that guy? What is he going to think if a random stranger comes up and says, hey, man, can I just give you a hug, dude? Everyone's going to think I'm crazy. Everybody's going to think I'm weird. This is not normal. What's wrong with me? You know, there's all these thoughts that came out of nowhere, and I had to go squash all of that. Be like, I'm going to go freaking talk to that dude, you know? And you have to push that down. So you listen for the prompting, and there's always going to be those thoughts.
Have you had any other instances like that happen before, where you just felt like talking to someone and then something came out of it? You had no expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I try to live that way, you know, which is a new thing too. Not totally new, but there's a pastor author. His name's Stephen Furtick, and he's got a book out called Do the New You. And I've been listening to that one on Audible. But he talks about doing and being like who you would aspire to be like, or the way you want to live, or what would the new you do? What would that improved you do? And just start living like that in the best way that you can right now, right? Like, I'm not a multimillionaire. I can't go just buy someone a house, right? But I can give someone a free meal at a restaurant, or I could give someone, the most recent one I did was during Christmas. This poor girl, dude, was out there at Christmas Eve, like super late at night, delivering packages. And I went and gave her $100 gift card to Cinemark, to the movie theaters. And when I say that this lady just like broke out in tears and gave me a hug, you know, it was just like, you have no idea, you know, my kids have wanted to see Wicked. You just don't know how that stuff will impact. I could use that $100 right now, but that's like, you know, like, again, I can't go buy someone a house, but I can do things like that when I feel called to, and you just never know.
Create the best version of yourself and gift that person to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, you know, as I grow, as you grow, we can do more of that, but with where we're at, like, we still have things we can do.
Yeah. I think that philosophy of whatever you're in need of, you need to give first, right? Like, you need more love in your life, you need to give more love. You need more money, you need to give more money. I feel like whatever you give is going to come back to you.
Yeah.
And you just have to make that first step of an outward offering, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be monetary, but, you know, just, I think love's a big one. Gratitude's a huge one. I know I love it when someone just texts me a gratitude text. You know, that's a cool trend that's starting to catch on. You know, just getting those texts from people is like, I appreciate you. Like, I'm glad you're in my life. And then I know when I send those out to people are like, man, that made my day. I was having a hard day. Like, you never know, right? You never know when someone just needs to hear, like, I appreciate you being in my life. You're a solid dude.
Yep.
Something as simple as that can really change someone's days and their outcome and maybe their life.
Yeah. Well, with every interaction, your thoughts will spiral a certain way, right? There's always some kind of response. And, you know, I think back to, well, two examples flood my mind, but one, when I was the one on the floor crying, ready to give up, my friend Sean called me and invited me to McDonald's. That very well could have been something that changed the whole trajectory of my life. You know what I mean? Literally, it was, because then the viral video, all these other things. But then I also think about that dentist who my mom and I were very close to, you know, just not too far before that, we were at his house for Christmas. He was giving us gifts. He seemed totally fine. And every interaction we had, I think I talked with him literally like a couple days before for my own dentist appointment, where the dude was in there fixing my teeth. Never could have been able to tell. And so how would like if he got texts of just like, hey man, you're so awesome, thanks for being you, you know, those kinds of things, they literally might reverse something tragic. You have no idea.
Yeah, little acts of gratitude, little acts of kindness go a huge way. My wife and I were just talking about having our kids watch Pay It Forward.
Oh yeah.
Because it started because we had them watch Christmas shoes for Christmas, and they just bawled their eyes out.
Yeah.
Everybody cried, whatever. And then I was like, well, if we're on this trend, might as well have them watch Pay It Forward. Get them all these good Hallmark movies or whatever. But, I mean, it's so true. You just got to keep gifting and giving. We were at Red Robin on Christmas Eve, and we were getting ready to pay, and the waiter's like, well, someone else has paid your table, like you're good. And like, and it's funny because we were planning on giving the waiter like $100 tip, like that was what we needed, but I didn't know we had cash, so I was like, well, we were gonna put it on the card, so I was like, well, let's just order dessert or something real quick, right? Like something small. And then my wife's like, we have cash, but anyway, so then we're like, well, we seen this mom and her son right next to us, and we're like, we'll pay for them. And so we did, and we left, and you know, they never know who it was. And I was telling my wife, I was like, I wonder how many people did that before us tonight.
Yeah.
You know, because it catches on, and I'm sure it's a time of year.
There's like a chain reaction where
yeah,
everyone starts paying it forward.
Right. Yeah. I was like, I don't know. I wish there was more of that randomly, like in April or something, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's one thing I was telling her too, is one day when we're, you know, wealthy enough or whatever, I just would love to that's the standards, just like tip the bill, like, because there's so many people that no matter when you're out to eat or what you're doing or just giving anyway, that's something I would love to just be able to teach my kids too, of just the act of giving instead of always receiving. And we try and do that now, but just to get them to really enjoy doing that is one thing I think we're going to work on this year for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it doesn't even have to be like money sometimes. It's just being open to seeing where there is a need that you could totally bless someone, you know. As you were sharing that, you know, example that happened to you, I was trying to think, when has that happened to me? And literally one thing that came to mind was when I was on my mission, you know, there's a lot of walking involved, and I literally had such torn up shoes, dude. Like you could literally see my feet through my shoes because of how much they had been destroyed. I remember going into church one day, and this guy in the hallway was just like, what size of shoe are you? You know, I was like 11 and a half. And he's like, oh, perfect. And he kicked off his shoes and he gave me his shoes. And this dude was loaded. And he told me, he's like, those are like, you know, $350 Echoes or whatever they're called. And he's like, so that should be better for you. I was like, what the heck? You know, thank you. But the thing is he was mindful. He was receptive. He saw like this kid's shoe, and what are the odds that, you know, same size, whatever, but he literally kicked off his shoes, gave me his shoes. And that may be something that set in motion the kind of moments that I have now where I want to give back. I want to do what I can.
What does your ideal giving back situation look like now going forward?
Oh man, like vision board style.
It's just like, yeah, I mean, like, who's your target audience you would like to help?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think anyone who has struggled with mental health, like on that level of like being ready to call it quits. And people who are really big dreamers who feel like they have something more, something great to bring, and they just are looking for the clarity to connect all the dots. So I guess on more of a specific perspective would be solo practitioners, personal brand builders, podcasters, anyone that's got that mission they're trying to do, but they face the demons every day. That's something I think is so under talked about, is branding and business and entrepreneurship is like so connected and so tied to personal development, mental health, mental wellness, facing your demons, all of that stuff. But you always find them in two different categories. And if you want to really get to know yourself and like, launch yourself into that personal development journey, start a business, start a hobby, start doing something where you have to like, I'm sure you have learned tons of lessons just in launching and doing this podcast and doing your weight loss services and coaching and, where you're at in this idea of eventually, leaping into fully your own thing. Like through all of that, it's very entrepreneurial, but it's also like a very personal development, mind freak journey,
Oh yeah, it's huge. I had to definitely get myself in shape physically and mentally before I could even attempt to offer to help anybody else. If I can't even help myself, back to NF, he's got a line where it's like, how can anybody believe in you if you don't believe in you? I might be messing it up, but
I think that's In Hope as well.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that song just took over, but I took that to heart. Like how can I expect to help anybody else if I want to be a trainer, I can't help someone if I'm not in shape myself. How can I, be a leader in my family if I can't even overcome the things that I want to do? I'm quitting in a lot of things that I'm, it gets hard. I'm going to quit. What am I going to tell my kids when they want to quit a sport or something? And I'll tell them, no, you got to keep pushing when it's hard. And then they look at me and say, hey, Dad, but you quit when you didn't want to go to the gym anymore. Or you quit when things were hard. Or, I also come from a divorced family too. So then I start looking at, I need to fix my relationship with my wife and because, I don't want my kids to have to go through what I went through.
Right.
But it all comes back to me. Like I had to take ownership and you just have to work on yourself first. There's another saying out there that I really love, and it's be so busy improving yourself, you have no time to put anybody else down.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's true. Well, and Gary Vaynerchuk has talked about, he's like, why worry about, crushing your competition when you could just worry about building yourself so high that like, you're not even worried about the competition. You're just doing your thing, right?
Yeah.
You got to, focus on you and what you're building. I think that's great.
Well, what's a good place for everybody to follow you at, man?
I made it pretty easy. My website is parkerkane.co, and my last name Kane is spelled Kane. So parkerkane.co. That website is where you could go to get anything, but that's also the same exact spelling as my Instagram handle and social media. So parkerkane.co.
Cool. I'll drop a link below.
Awesome.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming out, and I've learned a lot, and I'm sure we're going to be in touch. I'll have to have you out again. I love all the mindset stuff, and
right.
It's been huge, dude. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited to stay connected with you and some of the other people we're meeting and networking with. And if you need anything from me, man, I'm always here. And I'm also selfishly, glad to have another connection in the area that's my age. So
yeah, that is cool.
I got an in-person friend now instead of, everything online.
Absolutely. Networking is everything, and having people in your community. I think that's another thing that people are missing. That's another episode, but
yeah,
it's community. But All right, man. Well, have a good one.
Of course. Hey, and before you stop that, do you want me to beatbox at all to use anywhere in the show?
Yeah. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay.
I didn't feel like putting you on the spot.
Do you think like intro, outro, something random, or I could put Rain Brings Growth podcast. I could put that in the beatbox if you want.
Oh yeah, let's hear it, dude.
Okay.
That'd be sick.
Thank you for having me on the Rain Brings Growth. Rain Brings Growth podcast.
Holy cow, dude, that was sweet.
Thank you, man.
I can't imagine how many hours that took for you to...
A lifetime,
Yeah.
basically.